Peace, Chem family. It's Bana Set, your African holistic health nurse for Kemetic Wellness Sacred Healing Center, and I'm back with another video. So today we're going to be talking about Kemetic spirituality and why so many people of the African diaspora are returning to Kemetic spirituality or Afro-Kemetic spiritual traditions. Okay. If you're new to the channel, I am a holistic nurse. I am also a Kemetic scribe in the Middle Neter, which is the ancient language of Kemet. And I'm a Kemetic womb yoga dance practitioner and a Kemetic REIKI practitioner. So I am very well versed in the Kemetic traditions. If you like these kind of topics, go ahead and subscribe and hit the like button so that I know what you all want to watch in the future. Okay, so let's get right into this topic. Okay, why are so many Africans or Black people returning to traditional African spirituality? Specifically, we're going to be talking about Kemetic spirituality. I hear this question a lot from different people who do not understand why people are even studying ancient Kemet. I get this question, well, you people only seem to know about one country in Africa. Y'all, you talk about is Kemet. And what they don't understand is that Kemet is actually the mouthpiece of the ancient African continent. And I'm going to expound upon that later on. So let me tell you why so many people are actually returning to the spirituality, ancient spiritual traditions. One of the reasons is because the veil of ignorance is being lifted off of us, right? We know that we went through a period of the Ma'afa, which is the transatlantic slave system, as well as colonialism, and we're still undergoing the after effects of those conditions and the present effects of what we know as white supremacy, right? I hate using that term. So during that time, we were removed from everything that was who we were. Our language, our cultural traditions, our dance, even the styles that we did our hair in, and most importantly, our spirituality, right? The so-called gods that we pray to, our deities, our way of relating to the creator, that was stripped from us. And that is something that's different from any other group of people on the face of this earth, because we have all experienced oppression to one degree or another, but this is specific only to those of the African diaspora, that we had our relationship with the divine stripped from us and someone else's idea of God superimposed over us. And still to this day, the two religions that are most practiced by Black people worldwide are Islam and Christianity. And the two groups of people that enslaved Black people are Arabs and Europeans. And those were their religions. And so we're still praying to the same gods that those who oppressed us or terrorized us prayed to, right? Now, us coming out of that period of time and wanting to have a different experience and wanting to understand who we were before we had this tragic experience in the world. Many of us wanted to know, well, who did we pray to, right? Who did we pray to before that? And so we are returning to those traditions. We're going far back. And ancient Kemet, because of the writing system that ancient Kemet has, which is the Middle Neter, ancient Kemet was able to hold a lot of information that did not just come out of Egypt. It did not just come out of Egypt. Y'all have to understand that the Nile Valley goes throughout at least 11 African countries, including Tanzania and South Sudan and Sudan. And so the information that was cultivated in Kemet did not just come from Kemet. All of Africa contributed to the information that is in Kemet. It's just that because of the writing system and the vast amount of writings in the Middle Neture and in the artifacts, it became somewhat of a mouthpiece for Africa. Everybody cannot speak at one time. You're going to have a representative. And so when you're studying ancient Kemet, you're also studying the other ancient African countries that contributed to the works that we know we only attribute to Kemet. So that goes to answer the question as to why people are studying Kemet, because a lot of those other traditions are somewhat destroyed and also corrupted by colonialism. They are corrupted by colonialism. Even the language is corrupted by colonialism. And Medu Neter is the only pure language that we have prior to foreign invasion. Okay, let me say that again. Medu Neter, the language of ancient Kemet, is the only ancient African language that we have with a vast amount of literature and information that existed prior to foreign invasion. And so because of that, it is able to give you the voice of ancient Africa. So when you want to understand who we were before we became toxic, before we became what you see us as now, which is almost as a defeated people, you have to know the mindset of the people who thrived. And looking into the traditions, the spirituality, the language of ancient Kemet gives you that information. Peace, Alithia. Peace. So I see you all in the comments, and I love your comments. If you're in the live stream, go ahead and type something for me in the live chat. And I promise any questions that you post or any comments that you post, I'll get back to you once I'm finished with my full thought. Okay. So one of the things that started to wake us up and bring us into this reality that we are really asleep is these past several years where we've been seeing so many Black men and women be killed with impunity. And we saw it happen over and over and over and over and over again. And part of that was done to break our spirit. You know, when you see someone who looks exactly like you be harmed in that way, and you feel like there's nothing that you can do about it, a part of it is done to break you. It's meant to break your spirit. But the other part of that is that there are always going to be people who see past what is trying to be imparted to you, and who begin to think, how can I get out of this? How can we actually get out of this, right? And for those people like myself and others who are attracted to their ancient traditions, those things that kept us well holistically, they started to think and plot, how do we get out of this? And when you look at the situation, we don't have the manpower to fight this on a physical plane, right? We do not have the the manpower to fight this on a physical plane. We're not going to be able to get the same machinery that Wazungu have at this point in time. We're not prepared for that physical war. But if you understand the mindset of Africans and the mindset of Europeans, which I discussed in one of my videos in the playlist, The Alchemy of Black Healing. Y'all should check that playlist out, where I talked about the two different worldviews, right? So for the African, our worldview is spiritual. We focus on the spiritual before we focus on the physical. The European worldview is in the physical. So they dominate in the physical world more than anything. This is their playing field. This is why you can see African people, no matter what religion we practice, we are more religious than even the people who gave us those religions, right? Who forced those religions onto us. We do it on a deeper level than they do, right? We're very, very deeply spiritual people. And then you see in European cultures that everything's very materialistic, capitalism, this narcissistic type of mentality. They operate in the physical world, right? And so our power is in the spiritual world, which is more powerful than anything anyway. Because in order for anything to exist, it must exist in the ethers, in the spiritual world, before it exists in the physical. And so we understand that tapping back into our ancestral spiritual power is our power. That's our playing field, and that's where we can fight with love and in ma'at. Okay? So, all right, let me go deeper into this. So, all of the things that I teach on this channel is about building up that ashe, building up that sekem. Okay, sekem is the Kemetic word for your internal vital energy. You're building that energy up, and the more of us who do it collectively, the more we build that power up to project what it is that we want to see here in the physical world. The spiritual world is our playing ground. You understand? Okay. So I wanted to impart this quote that I learned from Professor James Smalls, right? And Professor James Smalls says that culture informs your life and spirituality guides your life. Okay? Your spirituality gives you your traditions, it gives you your character, it gives you your values and your principles. If you are practicing the culture of those who are committing genocide against you, you will also commit genocide against yourself. So, in returning to your own culture, that is where your power is. In removing yourself from the mindset of your oppressor's religion, which affects us in so many different ways, you are actually empowering yourself and giving yourself life. One of the things that I notice in doing holistic health as a nurse is when I come against my people who do not want to trust in their own traditions and who do not want to trust in holistic medicine, they are the ones who are most deeply programmed by religion and by the culture of Europeans, the most deeply programmed. And so what I realize is that I'm not even fighting them. It's not even a tug of war between them. It's really that worldview that they have over their African selves. They're not even seeing this world through our worldview. They're seeing this world through the eyes of someone who is opposite them and of those who are trying to destroy them. And so in you trying to give them life and help them to continue their life, they don't want to do it because it's totally opposite the worldview that they have, which is the worldview of destruction, of destroying them. Do you understand? So there's some of us who have not come into this understanding, and no matter how much you try to teach, show, preach, they will not get it. They will not get it. And there's a book called 2000 Seasons that's actually almost out of print. All our really good books are out of print, but you can get it. You have to look for it. It's called 2000 Seasons by Armand Quasi. I hope I'm saying that right. If not, I'll put it in the comment section. Okay. And what he describes is He describes the two nature of the sun people and of the ice people, right? And he describes the ice people, which are Wazungu, as the desert. And the desert is something that you go to where it has nothing for you. There's no nourishment, there's no water, there's no uh, vegetation. You go there to die, right? And then us as like the water and the well and the springs where all life you're able to nourish everything. Do you understand? And so many of us are deaf, dumb, and blind to what is really happening. And no matter what you tell them, they're not going to hear you. They're not going to hear you. But for those who are able to see what cannot be seen, to hear what cannot be heard, to know what is unknowable, you understand that you are the essence of all things, right? You understand, you hear the voice of your ancestors, you hear the truth, and you're following it. And for those of us who are doing that, it is leading you deeper and deeper and deeper into African history and into African tradition and culture. Okay, let me read some of the comments here. Alithia says, I moved to New Jersey 6 months ago and I had serious anxiety attack because of the racism. I am new in America. How do you detox from the oppressor religion? I sometimes feel afraid. Okay, that is a very good question. That's a very, very good question. So Dr. John Henrik Clarke said the only way to defeat an alien and oppressive culture is to embrace your own. The only way to defeat an alien and oppressive culture is to embrace your own. Now, if you don't believe me, you can see other cultures in the world who have also come up against white supremacy and they've done this exact thing. So you can pay attention to Asians, for example. Asians had different Asian groups. They've had their own battle with white supremacy. And what they did was they invested in their own culture, built up their own culture. They have their own communities where they fund their communities. They have their own language. They have their own religion. They have their own religion where they are worshiping deities that look like them, that speak to their culture and their essence, right? So they are embracing their own culture. They wear their own clothing. You can see this even in the Jewish culture, right? They wear their own clothing. So everything that they're doing in order to starve this culture that is trying to oppress them and keep them down is, I'm not going to give you my energy. I'm not going to give you my money. I'm going to give all of that to my culture and build it up. That's the same thing that we can do. That's the same exact thing. And I understand why there's a fear there, because a lot of the things that happen to us is deeply ingrained in us at an epigenetic level, meaning it's something that was experienced ancestrally, and you don't know why you're still feeling those things now today, but they're still within you. Our ancestors, whether here in the Americas or on the continent, experienced very serious consequences for practicing their own traditions. Very serious consequences. And that deeply embedded fear within us. Even the practice of Christianity, Islam, has taught us that everything else outside of that is evil and it is bad and it is negative. The only way to dispel fear is through knowledge. And so you're going to have to do your own research. You're going to have to read about your culture. What is it? What is it that they're telling you is so evil and is so wicked? What's so evil about? What is it? See, there's two different ways of thinking, right? There's two different ways of thinking. One way is symbolically. Symbolic thinking, which is what religion is. That's what racism is. That's what anything where someone is telling you what something is without you understanding it intrinsically, that's symbolic thinking. So this is an example of symbolic thinking. A lot of people have a fear of black cats, right? If you see a black cat on the road, it means it's bad luck. That's not based on anything real. If you see a black cat on the street, it just means the cat got somewhere to go. It's a cat. If you know what a cat is, that doesn't make any sense. Or you see me and based off the color of my skin, you have all of these other pre-existing ideas about who I am, but you don't even know me intrinsically as a person. You have no idea who I am, what I'm thinking, what I'm about, but you made up your mind about me based on an idea that somebody told you. That's symbolic thinking. Symptomatic thinking is the original way that human beings thought, and this is the way that animals think. It's true intelligent thinking. Symptomatic mean you know what something is based on the symptoms, based on the characteristics of it. So you know what a crocodile is because you see the long, I don't want to call it a snout. I don't know what it is. The long mouth of the crocodile. You see the tail. You see the spikes on its skin. You see the little short. You know that's a crocodile. You know because you can look at the symptoms. You can look at the characteristics to know what it is. It means that it is what it is. That's what symptomatic thinking is. It is what it is. So if you are afraid of something, the only way to dispel that fear is to find out what it is. What is it? Right? So if you want to see me talk more about Kemetic spirituality, and I have an idea for another video, which I'm going to talk about what the Necharu are, which is the basics of Kemetic spirituality, leave a comment in the comment section below or give me a like so that I know that y'all want to see that video. Okay. Bren Dave says, how do we guide them through this process of healing? When you say how do we guide them through this process of healing, who is them? Do you mean us? So I'll try my best to understand that based on what I got from that question. I think what you're saying is how are we guided through this process of healing? The best way to go through this process of healing is to have a jegna, which is a spiritual guide. That's the African word for in place of mentor. Okay. A jegna is an Ethiopian word that means basically a spiritual warrior or a guide, a person who stood the test of time. You want to study under an African-centered scholar, a verified African-centered scholar, okay? That means this is someone who is a part of the community. They are verified by the community. They have been vetted by the community, and you know that they are doing good work. Someone who has earned their stripes as a priest or a priestess, or they have been teaching the community for many years, several years. Okay, it's not some lone wolf who comes out. We got a lot of gurus on YouTube and on the internet. They pop up out of nowhere. They're not connected to anybody, and you have thousands of people following them, and they don't have good character. They got this much information and they got a good mouthpiece, and all of a sudden they have tens of thousands of followers, but they don't have any real character and they're not really guiding you in the right way. You want to get with somebody who is a verified African-centered scholar. Okay. Shania says, peace, queen. Are you a mentor? I'm a nurse and inspired by you. Peace, Empress. Peace. I appreciate that. I am not a mentor because I don't use the term mentor. Mentor has connotations from Greek culture, and a mentor was basically the old man who gave a young boy his first juk in the behind. And so over here, we are African-centered in everything that we do. So we use African-centered terms that are based in Ma'at. So we use the term jegna, okay? A jegna is the Ethiopian word that is a guide, a spiritual guide that can show you where to go on your journey, right? And so for me, I had several guides. My first teacher in the Kemetic tradition was Mfundishi Jehutimis, and he's the high priest of the shrine Kara Jehuti Herunethu. And he is the one who taught me that your healing is in your culture. And my second teacher, my second jegna, was Queen Afua. And she's used the Kemetic traditions to guide us through our rites of passage as women, to teach us what it looks like as women of African descent, how to live in our power, how to know ourselves first, and how to heal ourselves, mind, body, and spirit through ancient African natural lifestyle. Okay. My next teacher was Mushat Shemsut. And actually, Mushat was my second teacher. Sorry. Mushat Shemsut of Enlightened Yoga in the Bronx. And she was my first teacher in Kemetic Reiki sciences. And she taught me how to heal myself using energetic healing, because everything begins at the energetic level before you experience it on a physical level. And she taught me how to use my hands, how to use sounds, how to use words, intentions, prayers, all of those things to change even physical ailments in your body. So I am a certified Kemetic Reiki practitioner as well. She was my second teacher. My fourth teacher was Dr. Akua Gray, and she was the one who certified me in natural health and wellness as a consultant. And my fifth teacher was and is Reiki Kajara Nia, who's the founder of the Raseki Arts Temple. And so these are people who are verified in the community, and as well as myself. So to answer Trinea, your question, would I be a mentor? Yes, I am not a mentor. Would I be a jegna? Yes, yes, I would be a jegna to you if you would like, and the way that you can study with me is to join me on KemeticWellness.com, become a part of the community. I have several classes there on Kemetic spiritual teachings and natural African holistic health. Okay, so that is the way that I could be your jegna. You said, wow, that's what I want to do. I totally understand. I totally understand that. And I encourage you to go for it if that's what you want. Okay, so getting back to what I was saying before. Why did some of us choose this particular tradition, right? Those of us who chose to go into traditional African spiritual systems, generally you're the one who thinks a little bit different than those who are around you. You are very likely the odd one in your family. You're the one who thinks differently in your family. You're the one who sees the world differently. You can very likely see the problems that are happening in your community, and you've probably always seen them. Or you've seen the problems in your family, the toxicities, and you wanted to change them, or you want to change them. You always had an affinity to change them. Right? Whereas other members of the family may see these things, they may know that they're going on, but they either feel like this is normal because they see everyone else going through the same thing, or they feel like, well, this is how everybody else does this, so it's nothing wrong with it. I don't see anything wrong with it. They go along with it. Everybody is going to notice what's going on, but not everybody is going to be moved to actually change things. And so for those of you who see this and you have a deep level of disturbance about it, like you are deeply disturbed by what you are seeing, and you know that something can be done, and you know that you can do something about it, which all of us can and should. Generally, these are the ones who end up returning to tradition, right? In your attempt to heal what was destroyed. Okay. So that's another one of the reasons why people are returning to Kemetic spirituality. Another thing that I've heard, um, another thing that I've heard from some of my clients is they've been in church at certain times. Like I've had clients who've held very high positions in the church. They've been in church and they feel like something is missing. Like something is missing here. There's something that I'm not getting. There's something that's not being taught to me. There's something that's not clicking all the way. And they know something is missing and they go seeking for it. And this is how they end up finding more about their culture. And I've actually always had that feeling. I've had that feeling for a very long time since I was a child. Certain things that were taught to me from Christian teachings just didn't make any sense. They just didn't make any sense to me. And I remember trying to go deeper into it because I always had a very strong spiritual connection. But I didn't understand why I didn't feel connected to God as God was talked about in the Bible. I didn't understand why I didn't feel a connection. And I think the biggest difference for me is that I would be praying, number one, to uh, a man. Like, I don't understand calling God a he all the time. That's weird to me. All life comes through the feminine principle, and you're going to call the divine creator he did this and he did that, and God he. That didn't make any sense to me. And the other thing was praying to something that it felt like some power up there, out there, had total control over my life. And I would just be praying, begging, God, please, can I make this happen? And, you're praying to something outside of yourself. Now, the difference between those particular religions, Judeo-Christian religions, and traditional African spiritual systems is that the idea of God from the Western system is that God is something that is outside of you. God is an entity or entities that you are at the will of. So you are at the will of God, which is why people will say, if it's God's will, let it be done. If God willing, you know, um, it's something outside of you. In African traditional systems, first of all, God is not a term that is used. That's not a term that is used. Okay, that comes from Germanic tribes, right? The term that's used in ancient Kemet is nature, and it's very likely the root word of the word nature. And what that means is an expression of divine principles of nature. Remember, I talked to you earlier about symptomatic thinking, right? Africans knew about what. Please do a session on the nature rule. You got it. I definitely will. I definitely will. That'll probably be my next video, actually. So African people understood the creator based on what we could see in nature. And based on what we saw in nature, we understood the divine laws and principles that governed this life and gave reverence to it. So, for example, the sun, right? We call the energy behind the sun Ra, Ra. And a lot of Western cultures will diminish traditional spiritual systems, such as African traditional spiritual systems, and even those of South America, like the Olmecs, the Mayans, and things like that, and say they were worshiping false gods, they were worshiping the sun. That's not what that was. They gave reverence to how the Creator manifested itself in all of nature and all of these different ways that gave us life. The sun powers everything that exists in this entire solar system, not just here on Earth. It doesn't just help the plants grow. It's not just a force that governs all of the planets that revolve around it. Can you imagine what life would be like if the sun just decided to never come out again? If the sun just said, I'm done with y'all, I'm not coming out no more, what would happen? I want you to think about that for a moment, how important the force of the sun is, not just on Earth, but in the entire galaxy, in the entire omniverse. So we understood the power behind that, how it gives life. And we gave reverence to that. And we also gave reverence to all of the different energy forces that are manifestations of the one most high creator, creatress. That's another thing. We always gave reverence to both masculine and feminine aspects of divinity. There was no such thing as God is a man, which is ridiculous. There's no such thing as God is just female. This is why you have these different energies, which are laws and principles of nature that are expressed in feminine and masculine necheru. Necheru is that the term that's used in ancient Kemet, which is just different expressions of divinity. Okay, different principles of nature that exist outside, you can see in nature, and they also exist within you. So, in understanding those laws and principles of nature, you also begin to understand yourself better. It's a total different level of understanding of who you are and of the world that we exist in. So, that is part of the reason why people are returning to these ancient spiritual systems, because it's a return to self. It's a return to our whole selves that was defragmented throughout this process of colonialism and slavery. Okay. So this is not just expressed in the Kemetic spiritual system, it's expressed in all of the other African spiritual systems, even those that are deemed as evil. And you have to understand that they're deemed as evil, not because they are. You have to analyze who is saying that to you and why they are saying that. They are called and deemed as evil because they were used to empower you. And when you are empowered, that means that you have the ability to defeat those who are oppressing you. So these same ideas are expressed in Ifa, which is the traditional religion of the Yoruba in Nigeria. It's also expressed in Lukumi, Santeria, which is an offset of Ifa that came through Cuba and in Latin America. It is also expressed in the Akan tradition, which is known as Akom, okay? And that comes out of Ghana. It is also expressed in West African voodoo, which you see in Haitian voodoo, and you also see in Jamaica, which is known as Obia. All they are doing is using the divine forces of nature, air, fire, water, earth, and spirit, to manipulate energy outside and within. That is all they are doing. So you want to tell me that air, fire, water, earth, and spirit is evil? Does that make sense? That's evil. Now, can people use it to do evil? Yes. Yes, they can. Do people use Christianity and Islam to do evil? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Okay, you can use anything to do good or evil. That doesn't mean it's intrinsically evil. And the only reason that was taught to you is because those systems were used by us to defeat our oppressors. So, for example, voodoo is one of the things that the Haitians use to defeat white people, the French, okay, in their country. That was one of the things that they used to defeat them. They use the power of the energies here on earth and their ancestors to defeat those who were oppressing them. And from that point, they deemed not only Haitians evil, but they deemed anything related to voodoo and ancient African spiritual traditions evil. It's evil because it can be used against them and it can be used to empower you. So find out what it is before you accept that as true. Find out what it is before you accept that as true. And I know it is very, very, very difficult because it's a deep programming. And at one point I was afraid to look into this information and to practice any of these things because of how I grew up. I grew up in a Christian household. And even though I was never deeply connected to it, that programming was still there and that fear was still there. So I can only imagine for anybody who is deeply ingrained in that religion, how difficult it would be to come out of that. But you need to educate yourself. And if you want me to, I will discuss in deeper detail on certain books that you can read that really illustrate what was done to us on a spiritual and on a mental level to ingrain that within us and how it was done. There's several books that I've read throughout my practice and my teachings or my learnings as a Kemetic priestess that really illustrated the fact that this was brainwashed into us. This was programmed into us. So that fear it's a big one, but it can be overcome through knowledge. That's the only way to overcome and dispel fear is through knowledge, through light. Okay. So if anybody has any more questions, you can put them in the live chat, or if you're watching this on a playback, put them in the comments section. Let me know if you want to see that video on the Necheru. I got a comment from Bren Dave asking me to do a video on the Necheru, and I'll do that next. Get the comments up to the likes up to 20. And I will definitely do that as my next video, okay? So I thank you all for watching. I thank you for your feedback, and I will definitely see you in the next video. Peace.